I know some of y'all don't want to hear this, okay? But it's time to forgive. I'm not saying do it today. I'm not saying do it tomorrow. It can take months and years to process what someone did to you, but I'm saying at one point you will have to let go of the grudge and you will have to forgive. Not for that person, but for yourself. Because eventually it will come to the point where you will have to choose. Am I going to stay this miserable and carry on the grudge just to make that person feel better? Which, spoiler alert, they don't care. Or are you going to say, you know what? Yes, this happened, but I'm not going to let this define me. And I'm going to take the weight off my shoulders and live a somehow and somewhat fulfilling life. Yeah, you will have to choose between that. And I'm here to break it down for you, how to forgive, why you should forgive, and why it's absolutely necessary. Hi guys, it's Alara and welcome back to my channel. I want to start off this video by saying I was a person who held grudges for years and years and years. I hated people, I hated humanity, that was my thing. But not anymore. I want to break down why holding grudges and why unforgiveness is so damaging and so bad for you. Because first of all, we're gonna start with this, okay? Let's break it down. Forgiveness is not for the other person. Let's start off with that, okay? Forgiveness has nothing to do with you lifting the weight off of that person and lifting the weight off of what they did off of them, but rather saying, yes, they did this to me. It was a very horrible thing, but this thing, after months and years of it happening, is still pushing me and dragging me down, and I cannot go on like this anymore. Forgiveness is about lifting the weight off of your shoulders, because the more you hold on to the hate to that person, the more you hold on to that grudge, the more miserable you become, because you're not processing the trauma. So there has, obviously, what you went through has caused some sort of trauma, and by you holding the grudge, you're also holding on to the trauma. You're saying, this is part of me. Whatever that person did, it's unforgivable, and they don't deserve my forgiveness. That might be the case. They don't deserve it. But first, you have to keep in mind, they don't care about your grudge. No one in this world will ever care that you hold a grudge against them. Matter of fact, they will forget what they did to you, and they will live their life like nothing ever happened. And here you are, being miserable, staying stuck with the traumatic events and not moving on with your life because you want to drag them down with your negative energy and your negative thoughts. That's not the case. They're moving on just fine with their life. And that's something that's also pissing you off. It's counterproductive in every single way to hold grudges and not forgive, because not only do they not care, but they're moving on just fine in their lives. Maybe they have some thoughts, and that's just maybe, right? If they somehow have a consciousness, that's just maybe. And you're just there. So are you actually gonna stay this way, or are you gonna say, you know what? It's time for a change. There's also this huge misconception that forgiveness is showing weakness. Absolutely not. It's quite the opposite. Forgiving someone who has caused so much damage to you is one of the strongest things you can ever do. If you can forgive someone, that shows just how strong you are and how set you are on healing yourself and moving on with your life. I was someone who didn't want to forgive because I had the fear that it made me weak, that people would view me as boneless and like, oh, look at her, she is forgiving someone who hurt her that badly, which bullcrap. That's not the case, because you're saying, I don't care how much you damaged me. I have control over my own life. That is why I am forgiving you and I'm moving on with my life. No. Forgiveness is not weakness. Forgiveness is strength. Forgiveness is something that requires a lot of strength, which is why I'm saying you don't have to forgive today. You don't have to forgive in a week, 2 weeks, because it takes time processing everything and saying, okay, you know what? I'm ready to overlook everything and say, this is not defining me in any kind of way or sense, is one of the most challenging things and one of the most defining things for you, because it just shows how much you love yourself, how much you love your life, and how much you're willing to go, because most people can't do this step. Most people hold on to the grudge for the rest of their lives. And one thing too, at one point you will have to realize that if you have held this grudge for a long time, it's because it has become your comfort zone. Letting it go doesn't feel safe, but keeping it and latching onto it is more harmful, actually. The more you live with the trauma, the more it becomes your reality. So everything you identify yourself with and everything you keep around you and keep close to you becomes your reality. So when you refuse to let go and say, I'm setting myself free and I'm setting this person free as well, you are becoming a whole new person, because you're breaking out of the comfort zones. You're breaking out of the cage you have built for yourself, because that is exactly what it is. Grudges are something that hold you down. Grudges are something that keep you in a cage full of misery and hate. And if you look at people, we were not designed to hate. This system and everything around us is filling us with hate, rage, and misery, but that's not who we are supposed to be. The moment you start loving yourself again, and that's a huge step two for forgiveness, you have to start loving yourself again. The more you start to realize, okay, you know what? That person, I can see somehow, and I'm not saying this is justified, right? What they did to you is not justified in any kind of sense, but you can kind of connect the dots as to why that person would possibly do that. And at the end of the day, you realize everyone is damaged goods. Every single human being on this planet is damaged goods. But there's a major difference between two people. There's the people who don't let it out on people, and there's the other group who let their misery and the tragedy that formed those people affect other people. You choose to be the person to not let it affect other people, which is great for you. But I somehow understand where they're coming from, which again is in no way justifying what they did. It's still horrible, but I can see where they're coming from, because everyone at some point was a child, right? And you were a child too. Absolutely. And you did not deserve what you went through. But at the same time, you kind of start to understand, okay, you know what? That person was not as strong and could not process it the way I did, because everyone is different. And it's just honestly sad what we're doing to each other as human beings. And I think that's a huge part of forgiveness too, to see, yeah, everyone is damaged goods. Everyone has trauma. Also, what is connected to weakness, right? That forgiveness is weakness, while it's not. Forgiveness also isn't disrespecting yourself. A huge thing that was holding me back from forgiving was like, but if I forgive that person, isn't that like disrespecting myself? Why? They don't deserve it. And not only do they not deserve it, by me letting go of that grudge, I'm saying, I don't care what they did to me. No, that's not the point. It's not that you don't care. It's that you don't let it control you anymore. That's the difference. You're not disrespecting yourself by forgiving someone. You are saying, this isn't controlling me anymore. You're saying, I'm not letting the person that did this to me control my life. Because as long as that hatred is still there, that person has control over you. As much as you don't want to admit this, that pain is automatically and directly connected to the person who caused the damage, and therefore they hold complete power over you. The more you decide not to forgive, the more control they have over you. So you're saying, actually, it's not disrespecting yourself, it's respecting yourself to the point where you say, no one has control over me. So yeah. And I think this is the most important part, where people are like, no, I'm not gonna forgive, because people have the misconception of, if I forgive, everything has to go back to the way it was. If I forgive, I have to be in contact with that person. If I forgive, things have to go back to the way they were. Absolutely not. That's what we have boundaries for. You see, in my case, I'm gonna give you an example, right? It was the closest people to me who hurt me. And I held a grudge, and I couldn't really hold it long, because I have Christ in my life and he's really not letting me. Like, my heart has softened so much. At days it's even like frustrating, but at the same time I'm glad because I can't hold grudges the way I used to after accepting Christ in my life. It got to the point where it got violent, and I could have chosen to never forgive that person, and everyone who was around me at that time would have completely understood if I decided to go that route. But I said, no, I'm not, no. Because everything that person is doing is a reflection of their inner world. That's the thing. The reason why people are lashing out onto you, the person why people are treating you bad, are causing these traumas, are because you are mirrors to them. You are reflecting something to them that they don't want to see and accept. And it has absolutely nothing to do with you, but rather with the fact that you're mirroring the habit that they either want, or you're mirroring something that they can't be. And that is the thing that makes them lash out onto you. This is the thing, right? When you forgive, it doesn't mean that things have to go back to the way they were. No. I forgave the people who hurt me. Absolutely. I don't hold a grudge. I don't hate them. I even pray for them and wish them the best. But I don't want them in my life because they are not doing me good. And that is your birthright. You don't have to be in contact with people who hurt you. You don't have to be in contact with people who caused all of that damage. Absolutely not. You are not mandatory to give these people access to your life and to your energy. They don't have that right. For people to be in your life, that's something, and that's where you're right, that has to be earned. But you forgiving them, that's completely your thing. Like, forgiveness honestly doesn't have to be earned. It's something that sets you free. And when you say, I forgive you, and you don't even have to tell it to them face to face, you can forgive in your heart, because sometimes the faces can still be triggering, and that's okay. Because we're all processing things in time. But at the end of the day, no, you don't have to go back to talking to them. You don't have to be in contact with them. You can keep them blocked. You can keep them off of everything you had, because forgiveness does not mean access. Forgiveness does not mean familiarity. Not anymore. They had that chance. They had the chance to keep you in their life, and they decided, no, I'm gonna hurt you instead. And if they went down that path, that just shows how miserable they are. Very sad, actually. Most people, in fact, don't change. They stay the way they are because they're not ready to leave their comfort zones. They're not ready to say, I'm going to take responsibility for my actions and apologize to every single person and get things right with them. No, most people are not going to do that. Because first of all, they can't see what they're doing wrong because they're stuck in a prison of their own making. And as long as they don't have any output from outside to tell them, hey, yo, what you're doing is wrong, they're always going to see themselves in the right. So most people never change. And you should not expect them to change because the only thing you can ever change is yourself. And that is why forgiveness is there to set you free. Because it's going to set you free from past trauma. It's going to set you free from the shame that is attached to that trauma, the shame they caused. And girl, you have to forgive. You have to. And if you have problems, and God interception, I have to, because God is my one and only. Jesus is my everything. I have to do this. But if you have problems forgiving, go to Jesus with it. Pray to him because he will soften your heart. Like, as I said, at times it's like frustrating. I'm like, Jesus, I don't want to be this soft. But he's like, and we're not doing that here. Okay? Jesus has the power to make you overcome everything, and he makes it a lot easier because you don't have to depend on your own strength but on his, because he will make it. Forgive, girl. Do it for yourself.